Yes, welcome back to the channel, World News and Gaming. Right, anyway, so today the Pope come out with this. Pope issues new law on reporting sex abuse. Yeah? So, he's come out with this statement today. But it's nothing to be impressed about. It's nothing to be impressed about at all. Because it should be mandatory. It should be mandatory. So, it's no achievement. Yeah? Because it should have been mandatory. So many people have suffered. Yeah? Anyway, let's get into it.
The Pope has issued a groundbreaking new law. It's the latest effort to combat sex abuse in the Catholic Church.
All Catholic priests and nuns will now be required to report abuse and potential cover-ups, including those by their superiors to church authorities. So CBS News foreign correspondent Seth Doan is with us now from Italy. So these have really been the first concrete steps that we've seen being laid out by the church to combat sex abuse in the church. It occurred to me that these guidelines are basically the same guidelines that I think doctors, teachers, at least here in this country, a lot of people who work with children are required to do by law.
But it is surprising, Seth, that it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else has to go through the procedures, but why don't they have to go through no procedures? Yeah? Why, when something's reported, if a doctor gets reported or any person gets reported for sexual abuse, they go to prison for it. But if you're a priest, you don't go to prison for it. How does that work out? But anyway, that's just me ranting. We'll keep it going.
Standard to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting here to keep in mind is one of the major steps here is that this is universally required now through the entire church. The Pope wrote this morning. This was released just a couple of hours ago, and it applies to the entire church. So there are some churches like the U.S. Catholic Church, which is quite a bit further along than other churches, say in parts of Asia or Africa. And this is saying, all right, everybody, get up to speed. This is universal. Let us create a system here. And yes, making what you said in that lead in there is one of the key things, the mandatory reporting for both priests and nuns to report abuse. They have to report abuse. Also of note, they have to report old cases of abuse. So you could see really a wave of new abuse cases coming in that even date back some time.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But Seth, let me ask this then. When they report the abuse, who do they report it to? Do they report it to a bishop, the leader of that parish or that diocese, or do they report it to the police?
All right.
Well, they notably do not, it is not mandatory for them to report it to the police, which is one of the criticisms, but it is mandatory for them to follow civil laws. So if you're in a country where you're supposed to report abuse, which is of course many countries in the world, now it is mandatory for anyone to report that abuse to civil authorities. But it still does keep this in the realm of the church. Now, how it's reported depends on where the abuse takes place, but it does set up a very specific system to deal with that, and it deals significantly with the issue of covering up abuse. And this issue, which we looked at, of course, you remember quite a bit back in February when they held that landmark sex abuse summit at the Vatican. The issue of covering up was one of the biggest issues within the church. So now there is a system in place that they can deal with that. Most of it goes through, these investigations are handled by someone called the Metropolitan, which is generally the Archbishop. The Metropolitan is, in essence, it's kind of the biggest Archbishop of a region. But you remember, some of those Metropolitans have been people like Bernard Law and...
Well, I'm going to stop it there because this should be mandatory anyway. So, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to make it out as it's some big deal or something, like it's some epic milestone. It's not. It should have been mandatory. If someone's getting abused, you go and report it, yeah? If a kid's getting abused, you go and report it, yeah? Or woman, or man, or whatever it is, yeah? You go and report it. So it's not anything historical, yeah? It should have been fucking mandatory. But there you go. Anyway, peace. Tell me what you think. I don't want to go on anymore because I just get angry. Alright, peace.